Some leading economists are arguing that opposition to the fuel payment cut might be slightly overblown. Paul Johnson from the Institute for Fiscal Studies tweeted this. 2 facts re winter fuel allowance. At £200, it's same in cash terms as in 2000, so a real terms cut of 45%, slow drift into irrelevance, and 2, pensioners much better off than they were then. Poverty rate down from 26% to 16%, median income up 38%, only up 19% for non-pensioners. So he's making the argument, I don't think the entirely unreasonable argument, that one, the winter fuel payment isn't that huge. It used to be worth twice what it was when it was introduced in 2000. And the key context when it was introduced by New Labour is that then pensioner poverty was much higher than poverty among other sectors of society. Now, actually, relative to other sectors of society, pensioners do okay. That doesn't mean there won't be a significant number of people falling through the cracks, of course. Let's go to an even more famous boffin, though, who has come out against Keir Starmer.
Genuinely, I don't understand why they've done it. I do understand why you wouldn't pay the wealthy pensioners, but to go from, I'll be one of those in 2 years' time. So I wouldn't need the winter fuel allowance payment. But to go from 12 million to less than 2 million pensioners receiving it is just way too low. And I'm shocked by it because they could raise that money in so many other ways, including, for instance, private equity managers. All of this is kind of in the book, really. So, for instance, a few years ago, in one tax year, 255 private equity managers earned, very much in inverted commas, £2.7 billion between them. And they didn't pay 45% tax, as every employee who's earning a decent amount of money would pay. They have a special arrangement with HMRC at 28%. Now, that could instantly generate another 600-700 million.
So what do you think Keir Starmer should do now? Right, we've seen.
Well, I think he should apologise.
You think he should apologise?
I think I absolutely do.
Carol Vorderman was a very big campaigner, really, for Labour before the election. She's already disappointed at Keir Starmer and saying he should apologise to pensioners, which is quite strong, really. Helena, I thought that argument she made about sort of means testing being okay. So lots of people sort of on the internet and lots of policy wonks sort of saying, there are a lot of millionaire pensioners that don't really need to get this 200 or 300 quid. So a bit of means testing wouldn't be too objectionable. But going straight from 12 million people to 1.5 million people, clearly there's going to be a lot of people who are struggling, who are going to miss out. How do you sort of take that argument from her?
I mean, I just think that it makes it far easier to ensure that no one falls through the cracks by taxing it back from those who don't need it, because you already have the administration to be able to administer that tax rather than having to continue doing the means test. If you make it universal and you just claw it back from those by an increased tax threshold on those who do earn a lot, you avoid all of the problems with having to go through the means test in the first place, and potentially having to look through, having to understand if people are claiming it fraudulently and then going after them if they do. It makes it much more simple to me if you just say, look, if we tax the richer pensioners more, they still get the winter fuel payment. That's a wash as far as they are concerned. And yet we still have the entirety of our pensioners covered, regardless of how much they earn, because we know that we've created a broad spectrum in terms of how people get paid out. Because regardless of where you set that means test, and you could gradient it, I suppose you could have a gradient on the means test to ensure that there's not this cutoff point where people who are like £1 above the pension credit are getting less than people who do receive pension credit, which makes no sense to me. What's interesting to me, though, with the way in which she's talked about this is that it's like that she's not paid attention to anything that the Labour Party have said throughout the entirety of the election period or for the years before the election as well. There's this real buyer's remorse going on. People saying, I didn't vote for the Labour Party to get rid of the winter fuel payment or to put pensioners into poverty. And I'm like, did you not listen? Did you not hear when Rachel Reeves was banging on about fiscal credibility and sticking to the fiscal rules and ensuring that they weren't seen as turning the spending taps on, Liz Kendall in her statement there saying, well, the Conservatives are terrible with the economy because they spent too much money. When actually, you do need to spend money to have good governance. It's just spending the money in the right places rather than spending no money. And then she says, oh, well, they could be taxing financial transactions or private equity bosses, or we can have taxation on a lot of these bigger companies or whatever. But they've obviously ruled a lot of these things out. And you would know that there was no way they were going to actually tax a lot of these places more because they've been donating to the Labour Party. Labour Together is funded by people like financiers. If there's a reason that they're not attacking financial transactions, for example, because that would piss off the people who have essentially tried to finance Labour getting into government. Like, we were trying to tell people all the way up to the election period, this is what Labour were going to be like in government. And now they're the ones going, oh, I never voted for this. Well, unfortunately, unless you voted for somebody who was a member of the SCG or abstained on this literally is what you voted for.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I haven't gone back and sort of looked at all of Carol Vorderman's statements, but I think we are hearing all of this. I didn't vote for this. It's like they were kind of clear. It was like, the one thing you can say about this Labour Party is they didn't really, I suppose, they did say they wanted change and they're not really delivering change. So maybe there were some inconsistencies in their electoral message, but they were quite clear beforehand that we're not going to be a particularly generous government. So yeah, it's a bit difficult for people to sort of express surprise that they're behaving in a way that they kind of told us they would do.